So hello and welcome to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. I'm of course Matthew Rolland, and I'm super excited about my guest today. Joining me all the way from Los Angeles in California in America, it is of course Linsey Godfrey. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful.
I mean, I was just saying to you off air that it was about 5 years ago we did an interview back when you were on The Bold and the Beautiful, and what a pleasure, what a privilege it was to speak to you. So it's so good to have you back on.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you very much.
Now, obviously, since we last spoke, the world has completely changed. Life as we know it has completely changed. How have you found, being in lockdown, the coronavirus? I mean, how have you found the last 6-8 months, whatever it is now?
Oh boy, my 2020 has been the most peak 2020 of 2020s. Originally I was actually okay. I'm a really big homebody and I don't, this will always offend somebody. I don't have a particularly large friend group. And so I just kind of have my little core people, but even then I'm such a homebody that watches nothing but documentaries and docuseries and reads about politics and policy. That's kind of my whole life, and hanging out with my kiddo and stuff like that. So the hardest part, honestly, was doing the remote schooling.
I mean, did you find yourself doing anything new in lockdown? Teaching yourself a musical instrument, a language, anything like that?
Learning how to play the piano. I started learning the piano. I started learning German. Don't know why. Don't know anybody that speaks it. Not going to benefit me in any capacity. But I love it, and I think it's such a pretty language. So I was like, forget it. I'll learn it.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing with lockdown, is that it's given everyone so much time to do new things. So, I mean, obviously, when you're working, I mean, you're obviously currently working on Days of Our Lives, which is one of the soap operas over in America.
Yeah.
When you suddenly go from working all the time to not working at all, that must completely, you just completely change your world, and you must have to get used to a new way of life.
Yeah, you get too used to it, but with an actor, because we live kind of these inconsistent lives, it's very similar to feeling like you're just unemployed currently. So there's a little bit of a thing where you're like, oh man, we will say what are you working on and stuff like that. And you're like, oh man, I guess nothing. And then you're like, no, wait, hang on. I'm still on a show. I'm just not filming it. So it feels a little bit like that. So you have this kind of moment every once in a while with you as an actor, if you are currently on a show or something where you're like, oh man, this is so different. But then also you have the actors that are not working, not on shows, that are having to do these new things. A friend of mine just not only auditioned via Zoom, but then booked it and then had to go film it, out of state and then come back, which is just a whole other level. So at first you're kind of grateful for the break. At first you're like, this is great. I'm not taking in 40 pages of dialogue every single day. And then after a while you're like, but I just found stuff to busy myself. Originally when first things came out, and at first when it came out that wearing a mask was the thing, I made 50 or 60 masks for people, and I just passed them out. I made sure that a lot of our cast, especially the older cast, had a bunch, and just drove them all over the city, or had people come pick them up to my house and stuff, at my house and stuff. So I was just trying to do anything, A, that I could help, and B, to busy myself. And arts and crafts are always something that I've been really good at. And so I just took to sewing because it was something that I could do to help, and I didn't know what else to do. And so that's just kind of been my thing now, is okay, I'm stuck at home. We've returned back to work. But I'm I need to do something with all my time and energy besides bettering and educating myself. I was I just want to try to help. So that's what I've just been trying to do, is busy myself in useful ways.
Now, I mean, here in the UK, parts of our country are heading back into a sort of lockdown. I mean, how are you guys in Los Angeles? I mean, how are you kind of out of the woods a little bit, or are you?
No, I mean, United States has one of the highest rates of COVID in the world right now. And unfortunately, with our administration and our government, we get so much disinformation and misinformation spread to the people that it's really statewide. And depending on whether or not your governor of your state subscribes to the administration's kind of propaganda, sorry. You're really at the mercy of what science and Dr. Fauci here, the head of the CDC, is telling us to do, and what this administration is undermining constantly. I mean, So it's really difficult. So in California, being a more blue state and more, liberal leaning with our governor, Gavin Newsom, we are, we still have the strict mask mandates. You can't go into grocery stores. You can't go into most places without them. But then, we still have places that are largely red communities. You'll see that really big in like SoCal with like Orange County and stuff like that, where they tend to be a little bit more red. And you still have people here in Los Angeles who just like to fight. So like they might actually be a little more left leaning, but they don't want to wear a mask because they just like to fight or whatever. So, until we all get serious about protocols, we're not really able to eradicate it. And you see places like New Zealand and other places that are run by women that have gotten rid of it and have no new cases and have no new deaths and stuff like that. And so it is achievable, but you never know. I mean, we look like we might have to be going into it again, but it's all very up in the air for me and for us. Like, one day I'm like, oh, are we doing better? And then, our show actually is on a current 2-week hiatus. We had a positive test. And so, I was at work on Friday and I was like, I felt super safe. Everything is great, whatever, that. And we film completely different than all the other shows. Like, we don't practice distance filming because of our testing schedule, because we test every single day. And on our second day of work, you have to do a more accurate spit test. Just so gross. Nothing like sitting in an alley spitting into a cup. But, these things this thing is so confusing and it's so unpredictable. And then you just had the case of the guy who had already had it and has a second bout of it, and now it's back and it's worse. So I imagine if things don't change, if people don't start taking this thing more seriously, then yeah, we're going to run into another COVID. I mean, we're still technically in the, if you don't have to leave, don't leave thing, but we still have things slowly opening. We have restaurants opening and places opening, but you do see the places where they open bars and all that, no masks, and there's a surge in COVID. And it's
a very scary time at the moment, and no one knows what's going to happen next.
No, and you just realize too how quickly like people are just concerned, are not concerned with other people at all, and you're like, well, you just don't care if you give it to someone else. What happens if they get sick or die?
You have to do your bit and look after everyone at the end of the day. It doesn't take much to put a mask on.
I mean, it just, we all just have to take care of each other. And that's that thing where you're like, listen, I really don't care if you're like die hard for this president. I don't like this president, but when he got sick, I genuinely hoped nothing happened bad to him, because I don't want that. He has a young son. He has other children who I dislike as well, but I would never want any of those people to be sick. I would never want any of those people to get very sick, and I would never want the worst case scenario to happen to any of these people. And people who have actively just said, I don't give a F about you or your grandparents or your small children, I still don't wish ill for these people. But it is such a minor inconvenience for you to keep other people safe. You have no idea if somebody is immunocompromised that you're standing next to.
You get so many people that are asymptomatic, have no idea that they're carrying.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't take much at all to keep others safe, really.
No, totally. And I know people who have autoimmune disorders who you would have no idea at all. They're up and working. I've worked with people who have severe autoimmune disorders that we have to be careful with. You think about, look at Chadwick Boseman who was working, had cancer, but is immunocompromised and is working and is doing his job and doing amazing work. He's just one of my heroes. He's so incredible. But you have this fucking awful thing going around and you can't be bothered to put on a mask even though that you don't know that fucking Black Panther has cancer. Because you don't know, people aren't walking around with hey, I can't do anything because it's such a disregard for other human life, and it's such a simple fix that it just upsets me so deeply.
It's just ridiculous. Now, I must talk, because obviously I initially came to sort of know about yourself through The Bold and the Beautiful, because I was doing interviews with various cast members, and you were so lovely. So it was great to talk to you. Now, obviously, Caroline was such an amazing character. People really took her to their hearts. And I mean, one thing that I noticed through a lot of the fans from The Bold and the Beautiful was the love for Caroline and Ridge as a couple. And there's still people to this day that think that they need to get back together. So
Yeah.
what was it like being on that show and working with such amazing people?
You know, I loved that show so much, from the tippy top, you know, like I loved everyone from the tippy top all the way down to whoever. It was such a unique experience. You know, they gave me this opportunity that I had never been given before, which was to be a series regular on a show. They took a total chance in me because I'm not a soap actor. I mean, drama is not even what I moved to LA to do. And I think they just appreciated that I had played so many different types of people and I could be whatever. And so originally when they brought me on, it was so like, who is this character? And she was very similar to Hope, and Kimberly and I look so much alike. And I mean, like, we confuse ourselves for each other when we're both blonde. So when they figured out making her this kind of mean character, I got the phone call and I basically told Brad, I was like, look, I'm only okay with you making her a bitch out of nowhere if I can do it my way, right? Like, I can't do bitch the fantastic way that Adrienne France does it, you know, and she's just kind of catty and right in your face. She's great at it. I can't do bitch the way that Jacqueline McInnes does it, where she's kind of sexy and sultry. It's not in my repertoire. I wish it was. I just don't have it. And I wouldn't want to do it disservice when you have two women who are so good at it already. So I was like, let me do it my way. Give me one episode, and if you hate it, I will do it however you want. And it was that episode where she goes to feed the homeless with Rick, and she's awful. And I make her as funny as I could possibly find in the writing that was given to me. And they just eventually were like, go for it. And it got really, really big, and Lucille Ball, and then we brought it back down, and then she found this thing with Ridge. And, you know, they called me, I was on maternity leave. And Brad called me, and he was like, I have this idea. Now, mind you, they brought on Torsten. I was a big fan of Smash. I had a big old crush on Torsten, which, by the way, everybody did. Everybody on our show has a crush on Torsten. Everybody. And I was just such a fan of his acting. Like, I'd gotten to work with him in scenes, and I was just like, you know, I always have like a few people on different shows that I'm like, I'm amazed by you. And he was one of those. So when they brought the option to like, let me be love interest and let me play with this actor who I have massive respect for, I was so excited. And then Torsten and I just have such great chemistry, and we're so easy to be each other. And he became this amazing friend to me. And I mean, like, when I became a single parent, I mentioned to him, I was like, oh my gosh, my crib is being delivered and I'm not going to be home until like 8, and I'm not going to have time to put her in the crib. And he drove to my house where my nanny and daughter were, put my crib together, and left. Didn't say anything to me. And so, like, that was the thing for me, where I was like, I just wanted to work with this person who made my acting better, who was an amazing friend to me. And it just so happened that the fans really loved us together. And I loved that. Like, I loved Caroline and Ridge. I was as sad as the fans were when they broke us up. And I was sad when they made the decision to kill off Caroline. But at the same time, I love Annika so much that when they told me that it was a storyline facilitating Hope and Annika, I was like, oh, kill the bitch. Like, because I love Annika and I want any story for her. So that was where I felt like, oh, totally okay. Even though this character is somebody, I mean, Caroline is somebody so deep, and like, it was the first time that I was really just like, I was so in love with this character, and I had so much freedom. Like, they really trusted me there, and I really tried not to betray their trust with the character too much. You know, and I had to be reeled in because I'm very physically, my comedy is physical, and it's hard to reel me in, and I'm younger. I was younger then, so it was probably a little harder to reel me in than it would be now. But yeah, I loved that character, and I'm so grateful. Like, I definitely still get hit up on Twitter with, Carriage fans every day, and I'm so grateful for them, and I'm grateful for their dedication and support. And, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, I don't know, maybe one day, I hope that'd be be cool for them to be back together. I don't know, but I'm so happy at Days, and I also have this wonderful character at Days and a wonderful co-star at Days, which I feel the exact same way about. So it's really hard because I feel the exact same way about Paul that I do Torsten.
Now, I mean, I'm sure many people would love to see you come back, and we have seen characters return from the dead, so it is possible. But obviously now, as you say, you're playing Sarah on Days of Our Lives. So tell us a bit about that character, because I mean, how does she differ from Caroline?
You know, Sarah originally was just kind of this spitfire, and she's really spunky, and I never figure out with soaps if I just happen to be cast as a character that's very similar, or if they just start writing the character very similarly to me. Because I'm very spunky and I'm very straightforward and I have a lot of opinions and I talk really fast and I don't have a lot of time or patience in me to flower things up before I deliver them to you. So often they come off a little harsh and blunt. And Sarah's that way. I think Sarah was very different in her situation with Eric. I would have never had it in me to let that go on like that. I would have been like, I don't know, just figure out your shit and let me know. God, I can't with you. But a lot of it, like, especially now how they're writing Sarah, she's very similar. And they started to do the same thing where you'll see probably in next month or the month after, she starts to be a little bit more funny and start a little more like comfortable. Because oftentimes the soaps too, like, it takes a while, not only for the actor to figure out who the character is, but for the show to figure out who the character is. And if you really, like, even on Bold, like, if you looked at first 6 months to a year of Caroline with who you left with, I mean, those two people are totally different. And so I think, you know, Sarah isn't nearly as kind of big and ridiculous as Caroline could have been or would be at certain times. But at the core of them, they're both just these very straightforward, kind of no filter, deeply loving, deeply passionate people who are very fiercely protective of the people they care about. And in those ways, they couldn't be more similar to me. I'm definitely all of those things. I always used to joke that Caroline was probably a better dresser than I was. But now I don't feel that way. I just think she dressed more professional.
Now, obviously, being back on filming the show, I mean, how has it changed since obviously before lockdown to now? Because I know you said that obviously you're not having to distance quite, obviously as much as other soaps. So how has it changed for yourselves?
Well, we don't have to distance in the sense of like as soon as we're on set, then we can be kind of close and stuff like that. But as far as that, like walking out to set, and especially at Days, I will say, like, the way our dressing rooms are set up, because we're in such like the hallway and everything, like, I will tell you, I've never experienced a working environment quite like Days, where just everybody likes each other so goddamn much. And so, people would often just keep their doors open and we'd be yelling back and forth. And then, like, I share a wall with Eric Martzoff, and his room is the hangout room. And so, like, our walls are paper thin, so Martzoff and I can talk through the walls. But like, you'd go in and like Stacy would be in there, and Paul and Ari and Victoria and Rob and like whoever was in there, Sal would be in there, Lamone, like whoever's dressing room was down there would all be intermingling. So that's the hardest part, is that we can't be buddies. And so much of our life as cast are us existing as buddies. We talk to each other a lot, and a lot of the couples have their own like rapport with one another and each other's families. And then if you like people that I don't interact with, I'm weirdly super close with. And so, yeah, that's the one thing I think that we all struggle with at Days, is that we happen to be a very close-knit group of friends that really enjoy catching up with each other and chatting and talking about what they did this weekend and what's happening with the story. And we all like to guess. I'm a really good guesser. That really upsets people. I'm very good at guessing storylines. I'm always like, here's what's really going to happen in your story. So is going to do this, and then it's going to be this. Like, I guessed the baby switch. I guessed it. I was so excited.
You must be so, like you say, it must be such a nice feeling when you're like, yes, I got that. Now,
and
one
we
thing.
did.
Now, one thing I found myself doing in lockdown is obviously catching up on things on Netflix. And me and my girlfriend actually found ourselves watching a particular episode of Wizards of Waverly Place, which obviously you starred in. And I didn't realise you were in it until I saw you. And I was like, that's Linsey. So obviously you played a ghost. So do you remember your time on that show?
Oh yeah, I loved Wizards. It was so much fun. I made a lot of friends on there, and people. But yeah, I had so much fun. It was fun because I got to play this kind of like 1940s character, and she was a ghost, and it was my niece's favorite show at the time. And I knew David and Greg a little bit before going in, and then Jen Stone and I became buds, and Selena couldn't have been more lovely, and she and I bonded, and yeah, that was such a fun work experience, and it was so funny because when I was a kid, Disney and Nickelodeon would see me. I looked really old when I was young. I'm Benjamin Buttoning. I look much more younger now than I did when I was young. And so it was very funny to me to not book Nickelodeon or Disney Channel until I was in my 20s. Because again, like I did that, and I think right before that I had done Sweet Life on Deck. And again, like I was playing love interest to one of the boys, and I think it was Cole Sprouse, and he was 17. Like it was just one of those things where I was like, so that was me. And it's funny because I did a lot of, before I landed on Bold, that was kind of my bread and butter, was just kind of guest spots here and there. And so it's really funny, if you watch any sort of like crime drama for too long, I'll pop up in there.
I was going to say, when you get to do various different roles, it must be so much fun to kind of like stretch those muscles, and those acting muscles, and do different things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise get to do.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun about like when you're a guest star and you get to do all these different types, because I've played all different types of characters. And then yeah, you'll see yourself pop up every once in a while. Somebody will post something and you're like, oh yeah. That's me.
Going forward, have you got a dream role, something you would love to do going forward?
I think comedy is kind of my dream role. I always, I just did my little toe in stand up, and Kimberly constantly is pushing me to do more, which I love her for, because it's a really cute friendship where we're both each other's biggest fans. I think Kim is one of the most talented comedic actresses ever. I think she's so talented, and I love watching her. And I love comedy. I'm better when it's my own words. And she doesn't like that. And so it's this funny thing where I'm like, please do everything to do for like, please do it. And she's like, please do more stand up. So I think doing more stand up would make me happy, but ultimately, landing on like some sort of a sitcom would make me the happiest, or, my pipe dream would be landing on SNL, but I don't think that will ever happen. So we'll just land on a sitcom. But yeah, I think that would be it for me. I think, I always love challenging myself, and I love the opportunity that you get to challenge yourself in dramatic roles. And I don't poo-poo at drama at all, and I certainly have no poo-pooing at soaps. And if I spend the next 50 years in soaps, I would definitely be honored, because I think they're the hardest working. I mean, you've never seen anything until you've seen Heather Tom do an entire rehearsal as an old Jewish grandmother from New York, and then they call action, and then you just watch her go, and it's the most beautiful cry you've ever seen in your entire life. That is a skill and a half. So I kind of am like, wherever I land is where I land, and I would just be so grateful and happy to do the thing that I love and be respected in my field. That's all I really want.
No, I just have to say it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. It's so good to catch up after all these years. And just before we go, are there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who is stuck in hospital at the moment, not having the best of times?
Oh my gosh, I am just sending you all the well wishes, and please just get healthy and stay positive, and know that you are loved, and that I am thinking of you, and I'm sending you everything. What a crazy time. And yeah, please just everyone stay safe, wear a mask, stay healthy, check in with your friends, check in with your family, and just, be good to each other. But please just focus on healing and stay positive. Sending you so much healing energy.
Thank you so much, Linsey. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe. Thank you again for your time. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Absolutely.